WGSN-DB Going Solo Network welcomes you to the Relationship Recovery Show with your host, Shan White, divorce recovery coach, who helps people create the life they see when they close their eyes and dream. Let's listen in as we hear about techniques, tools, and strategies to recover and heal from a relationship due to breakup, divorce, or even death. Here's Shan now.
Welcome to Relationship Recovery. This is Shan White. I'm your host tonight for Relationship Recovery. You're listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. I'm so happy to have you join me tonight. Tonight's topic is going to be on the topic of forgiveness. And if your heart just tightened up right now, that may be a little warning sign that we need to talk about this. You know, forgiveness is something that is so misdiagnosed, if you will, in terms of what it is and what it's not. So in order to help maneuver through this extremely important topic, let's talk about what it's not. What forgiveness is not is, number one, it is not for them. If you have, which we all do, issues with people that have done us wrong, have hurt us, have betrayed us, have abandoned us, forgiveness is not for them. Forgiveness is for you. When you carry the burdens, and you know that it is a burden of anger, bitterness, resentment, irritation, hatred, loathing, all of that is stored up in your heart. And as you well know, it causes you to feel low energy, heavy, tight in your heart, not free, open in any way, shape, or form. And your heart actually just is shut down. And by the way, when you shut your heart down like that through unforgiveness, and it's a natural self-protective mechanism. It's a human nature to want to protect ourselves when harm has been done to us. But I want you to think about something. When you shut down from all of the bad feelings that you have, you're also shutting down all of the goodness that you can enjoy, because you don't get to choose one without the other. So when you're protecting yourself against bad things, as if we could, you're also protecting yourself. Your heart is also closed down to joy, love, gratitude, happiness, bliss, fun, spontaneity. So you're shutting down on both ends is the way that I'd love you to think about it. So when it comes to forgiveness, it is a matter of releasing all of those negative emotions, not for them, but for you. The other area of forgiveness, that forgiveness is not a way of saying it's okay what they did, because there are many things that have been done to us that were legitimately bad, wrong, and evil. So I think what happens is oftentimes we have the sense that if I forgive somebody, I am releasing them of the accountability of what they did to me and saying that it's okay what they did. It's, condoning what they did. Forgiveness is no way condoning or saying that it's okay for what they did. They legitimately could have potentially done something very wrong, and you're not saying it's okay. So let's just talk about what forgiveness is. In the dictionary, it talks about forgiveness is to give up resentment or a claim of requital, to grant relief of payment, to cease to feel resentment. And again, it's not a matter of what it is it's releasing judgment against them so that God or the universe, if you prefer, can mete out proper judgment. Because we as individual human beings, we don't have omniscience, all-knowing. We don't have omnipotence, all-power. We don't have full awareness of what's going on in their lives. And we have no way of being able to mete out proper judgment against that person. So it's actually doing you a service to release those negative emotions, number one, and number two, to release your personal judgment against them and turn them over to proper judgment. Again, if you're a believer in God, God is well able to mete out proper judgment against what happened and what was done to you. I never forget a minister once talked about the spiritual ramifications of unforgiveness. And what he said is that spiritually, when you are in unforgiveness, you are in a sense, in a very real and true sense, you are connecting yourself on a negative energy level with that person, holding on to them, binding them, if you will, for lack of a better term. But more importantly, you're binding yourself. You're holding yourself captivity. And think about it this way. If you are holding on to the past and what's happened, it's bad enough what happened to you and the harm that was done to you. But you do have a choice, and your choice is, do you want to continue to hold on to the pain and the hardship in your life and allow that to continue to have power over you? Because if you're not releasing all of those bad vibes, those bad energies, those bad feelings, in essence, what you're doing is you're saying, not only did they have power over me and what they did to me in the past, which you can't change, but I am choosing to allow that person to continue to have power over me in the present and in the future. And who wants that? If we're in a position, and the whole context of this going solo network is moving on and going solo after a breakup, a death, or divorce. So do we want to continue to allow that person to have control and power over how I live my life now in the present and how I live my life in the future? That which happened to me, that bad thing or things that happened to me, is now going to affect me in my current life and in my future life. Honestly, is that something that, you want for the rest of your life? I would think that would give you and me, all of us, motivation that it's bad enough that person, that thing, had power over me in the past, but I now get to choose whether it's going to affect and have this black cloud over my current life and my future life. And I got to tell you, the things that have happened to me and my life, I sure don't want that black cloud to continue over me. As a matter of fact, you guys remember the movie, The Green Mile, with John Coffey and Tom Hanks? Well, for those of you that don't remember it, I'll just share quickly. The Green Mile was about a story of this man in jail, and John Coffey was the actor, for those of you that know him. Big, beautiful African-American man, and he had this ability to heal people, to and including, I think it was Tom Hanks' wife who was sick in bed. And so what he would do is he would go and he would touch them and kind of like absorb all of negative sickness and disease, whether spiritually or physically, into his body. And then I'll never forget, you guys, this scene where he would open his mouth and all of this like black stuff, to me, it looked like tiny little black bugs, but it was probably, if I were to rerun the movie, look more like, just this dark smoke that came out of his mouth. And as the viewers of the movie watched this, they understood that he was releasing all of that blackness that came from the diseased body and releasing it out from him. Well, I would think of that image every time 7 years ago when my husband divorced me and left me what felt like left me for dead. And needless to say, I was so angry and I hated this man, and I felt all of this negative energy. And what I would do is, the first thing you need to do is just acknowledge that which you're feeling. We have this tendency of burying, right? All of the hatred and the anger and the upsetness, and to not acknowledge it means to keep it within your soul, your spirit. And so being a believer in God, I knew that God was powerful enough to handle all of my hatred and bitterness and anger. And so I would remember that scene of the blackness coming out. And so I would release to God all of those things. I hated him for this and I hated him for that. And I would not acknowledge, everything that I was feeling. And it was a sense of release for me. It was a sense of acknowledging all of those negative emotions that I had and just letting them go as I envisioned John Coffey opening his mouth and the black little, bugs, if you will, that were coming out. And as I did that, it gave me a sense of release of all of those negative emotions and just letting them go. You know what? This is not a one-time thing. That's another thing that is a misnomer about forgiveness. Forgiveness is not a one-time choice that I choose to release and let go all of these bad emotions that I have stored up in my heart. It is forgiveness almost always is a progress. It is progressive. So every time something would happen that would remind me of all of the betrayals and the abandonment and all of the horrible things that happened to me, I would envision that exercise. And you know what? You can envision it in whatever way that works for you. You could think of it as all of this baggage, for example, that I stored up, and envision a big, heavy bag with balls and chains and shooting it up into the sky and blowing it up. That's a beautiful thing about imagery. You can imagine that the weight or the heaviness or the baggage of all of that you're feeling in whatever way you most identify with, and release it in the way that makes sense to you, where it's gone, destroyed, blown up, laser beamed, whatever the case may be. So we're going to take a little break. You're listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo. Back in a moment after the commercials.
Are you looking for that soulmate connection? Well, I have a site for you that can definitely help you out. It's called Professional Singles, www.professional.singles. They connect like-minded individuals with their interests and their views on life, which really makes the soulmate connection. So if you are seeking love, if you are seeking a relationship, well, definitely check them out. It's professional.singles, www.professional.singles.com, and you can email them at contact@professional.singles.
Hi everyone, this is Lisa Copeland, the host of the You Can Find Love After 50 show. You can catch my show on Monday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, where we'll talk about how you can find love after 50 on the WGSN-DB Going Solo Network.
Hey, you're listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. This is Shan White, host of Relationship Recovery. Today we're talking about forgiveness. And in talking about forgiveness, we've talked about what forgiveness is not. So for those of you just tuning in, a quick recap is forgiveness is not for the offending person. Forgiveness is for you to release all of the negative emotions that are holding you back, not them, by the way. Forgiveness is not saying it's okay what they did. Also, I want to continue on in terms of what forgiveness is not. And, forgiveness doesn't mean that we put ourselves back into a harmful situation or that we suddenly accept or approve of that person's continued wrong behavior. It simply means that we release them from the wrong that they committed against us. Another question comes up about forgiveness is, what if I don't feel like forgiving others? And oftentimes we don't. We don't feel like forgiving those who have wronged us. It's easier to act our way into feeling than to feel our way into acting. And if you want yet another reason for forgiving, we talked about that it is helpful to us in keeping us moving forward and not having that negative cloud over us for our present and our future lives. But consider this. Having a nature of not forgiving others brings about bitterness. And bitterness has scientifically been linked to stress-related illnesses by medical researchers. So by forgiving others, we not only release and free ourselves spiritually and emotionally, but we also heal ourselves physically. If that's not reason enough for you, I urge you to rethink your process, because once again, forgiveness is for us emotionally, spiritually, even intellectually, mentally, physically. Forgiveness is for you, and there's so many great reasons to let this go. And guess what? This is a time that you get to be selfish, because this is about you. This is about your future. This is about your health, your strength, your vision, your hope. And that is worth being selfish for. Michael Singer wrote a book called The Untethered Soul. And if you haven't heard of it, I really urge you to consider buying the book. You can get it for pretty cheap on Amazon.com or I'm sure other websites. You can get it for just really affordable price. And if you don't have an issue with used, as I don't, as long as it's readable, who cares, right? So Michael Singer in The Untethered Soul, and this is all about, obviously, untethering or unburdening your soul. And in the book, there is a chapter called Let Go or Fall. And what he talks about is the law of letting go. And I'm going to read you very quickly a short little paragraph that may be of benefit to you. He talks about, when he's referring to the law of letting go, he says, there is a law you will learn very early in the game because it's an unavoidable truth. You will learn it early, but you will fall many times while trying to adhere to it. The law is very straightforward. When your stuff gets hit, and I'm going to pause right here when he talks about your stuff, meaning the stuff in your heart, the anger, the bitterness, the resentment, the frustration, the rejection, the abandonment. So when your stuff gets hit, let go right then, because it will be harder later. And that is true. It won't be easier if you explore it or play with it, hoping to take the edge off. It won't be easier to think about it, talk about it, or try to release only part of it at a time. If you want to be free to the core of your being, you must let go right away, because it will not be easier later. End of quote. I want to tell you that I have practiced this myself in my own life when stuff, as he says, causes what he says is when you feel disturbed. And how do you know when you feel disturbed? Because something happens, somebody does something, they've offended you, hurt you, slighted you, rejected you, and your heart starts to tighten up. That's when you know your stuff, if you will, has been hit. And when it gets hit, our natural human response is what he just said, to mull it over in our head. You've done this, right? To think about it. And why did they do that? And who the heck do they think they are? And we start rehearsing it over and over again in our heart. And is that letting it go? No, that's the opposite of letting it go. We hold on to it. We fuss about it. We gossip about it. We talk to others about it. And all in all, we're still retaining it. And it's actually making it worse. And so what Michael Singer recommends, and like he said, if you choose to practice this, there's going to be many times that you fall. But the more able you are able to practice this, let's call it a technique or an exercise, if you will, a strategy of the minute something hits your stuff, the more able you are to, and how he describes it, by the way, he was interviewed by Oprah Winfrey on Super Soul Sunday, and he talks about this, that the minute that it touches your soul, the more able you are to just let it go. How he describes it, it's kind of like an negative energy, if you will, not to get too woo-woo, that passes through your heart. And the quicker you're able to let it just release and pass through, he talks about that it will, the more quickly you're able to do it, it will just pass through you. And it's just a beautiful experience. I'm not saying I am anywhere close to being a master at it. I can tell you this, for folks that want to try this, the quicker you're able, first of all, to recognize your heart tightening up and able to release it and let it go. And what I do in my mind is I say, Shan, don't touch it. Don't touch it. And what I mean by that is, don't think about it. Don't try to mull it over. Don't try to figure it out in your head. Don't try to talk to others about it with the intent of just bitching about it. I mean, if you have an intent where you want to go to someone to help you work through it, yeah, that's fine. But the more able you're to just release it and let it go and just pass right through you, you will find that your soul will be more open. You will be free of the burden of whatever it is that happens. Here's another thought. I have my clients, one of the biggest complaints or concerns or fears that my clients and folks that I've talked to about moving on, going solo, getting over a relationship which is what this show is all about, recovering from a not so great relationship. The one thing that I hear most often is, I'm so afraid, Shan, that I'm not going to be able to find someone else again. I'm so scared that I will be alone for the rest of my life. So here's a thought to consider. If you're finding yourself in that place, whether you're at, the beginning, the middle, or the end of a bad relationship, and you're thinking of moving forward, which automatically brings you to the thought of, will I find somebody else? Here's another motivation to release and forgive and let go, or as Michael Singer says, fall, and you will fall. The law of attraction is a principle that is hugely important. So let's discuss it very quickly. The law of attraction talks about what you put out into this world comes back to you. That's a pretty easy principle to understand, right? So what the law of attraction talks about is you do not get what you want, but what you focus on. So think about it this way, if you are focusing on he or she did me wrong and he rejected me and he left me or he beat me, God forbid, or abused me or my kids, and you're focusing on all of this negative energy, what do you suppose the law of attraction says will come back to you? Well, of course, you're focusing on all the bad, all the negative, all the awful things, and what you're going to get back is the negative energy. You probably know people like this, don't you? Do you know people that are constantly negative, bitching, this goes wrong, of course this happens to me, with my bad luck, nothing else is ever going to happen to me, blah, 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 blah. They're in total victim mode, right? Well, and I know a lady like this. And have you noticed how when they talk about bad things always happen to them, it seems like bad things always happen to them? It's like they're a magnet, isn't it? It's like they draw that into them. So when it comes to thinking about finding someone else, here's what I want you to think about. If the law of attraction is true, and it is, then do you want to, in a new relationship, draw into you someone that had the same bad patterns and behaviors and the same quality of person that you got last time? Well, the answer is obvious. It's no, right? So if you are not able to release, forgive, let go of all of that negative energy, you are going to attract the same type of person. The question then becomes, do you want to attract someone like that? And if you don't, then this once again is yet another motivation to empty your own baggage, your own negative baggage, release it and let it go in order to attract what you truly want. So let's take this as an example. If you, progressively, it takes time. Yes, takes work. Yes. But as you are releasing all the negativity and you open your heart up to love, joy, peace, grace, mercy, bliss, gratitude, and all those things, what type of person do you think that you're going to attract when you're full of those types of feelings and states and mindset? I do hope that this has in some way inspired you to let go even just a little bit. And if it did, then I have done my service for the night. You're listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, sending out love to you, forgiveness, hope, grace, and mercy. Talk to you later.